G'day everyone. You know, at some stage when choosing and purchasing watches, you'll have seen a Submariner homage or 10 pop up at your local jewelers or online, and some brands put their own spin on this classic design, while others play it safe and stick to familiarity, and this Addiesdive falls into the latter of those camps. But what makes it a temptation is its commendable specifications, along with a ridiculously low price tag. So let's dive in and review the Addiesdive MY-H3-2QZ, which I'll now refer to as the Addies. So here's a specs list of all the details. I managed to pick this one up on AliExpress for a little over 43 Australian dollars, thanks to a sale on some coins, so it pays to look around for discounts. And if you like my video content and haven't had a chance till now, a like and subscribe is appreciated. Now, because you can buy this watch for less than 50 Aussie dollars with the right sale and coupon, you'd probably expect there to be some shortcomings with the Addies, and you wouldn't be wrong. So I figured I'll get the negatives out of the way. As expected, the crystal covering the dial is mineral and raised oh so slightly above the bezel, and these factors will make it more scratch prone if you brush up against walls or hard objects. The bezel has a very hollow, tinny sound when rotating it, and while I have handled bezels that are worse than this, it does spin a little too easily, and can even be turned with a single fingernail or even a firm single finger grip. The supplied oyster bracelet has plenty of rattle, has an unsigned stamped metal clasp and uses push pins for the bracelet links. And with the inclusion of polished center links on that bracelet, scratches will definitely appear. And the inclusion of male end links pushes out those lug-to-lug measurements, making it look and wear bigger. As a brief reprieve from the negatives, the crown is signed with the Addiesdive logo and looks decent quality, but that and the fact you'll rarely have to use the crown are the only two kind things to say about it. It's very stiff, which makes unscrewing it a bit of a chore. Setting the time isn't too much hassle thankfully, but adjusting the data is a bit of a dull experience, as you really have to spin the crown to move between days, and there's no audible or tactile click to let you know the data's changed. Rescrewing the crown can also be a trial, as you have to push the crown firmly back towards the case and screw simultaneously in order for it to thread properly. There's also a crown guard present, but given it barely surrounds the crown, I'm wondering why it was included. Either it needs to be moved out a bit more to provide actual protection, or just omitted altogether. But for me, the biggest negative with this Addies are its Mercedes hour and minute hands. They look more like an afterthought or were taken from a smaller watch or cut from the thinnest material possible. They're a little too short, not thick enough, and overall just look underwhelming on the dial. But it's not all bad with the Addies, as we'll surface towards the mixed feelings. The case fit and finish overall is quite nice for a watch at this price. On top of the lugs and underneath the case you have a brush finish, with an almost matte-like appearance of the lug ends, which I really dig. The case sides are polished, and similar to my earlier remark about the center links on the bracelet, this will show scratches with wear. The case back is screwed in and illustrates the laser-edged Addiesdive logo prominently in the center, with its specifications running around the outer edge. After owning several different Addies and steel dive watches, I've learnt to accept the logo more, but I'm still not sold on it. Because there's a bit of bulge present, it contributes to the Addies case thickness of 13mm excluding the Cyclops. Not overly tall for a diver, but for a quartz diver it does wear a little high. And you may have noticed that this Addies uses a similar screw-down case back to the Rolex Submariner, although for better or worse, you can remove it just using your fingers and a bit of gumption to access the movement and change the battery. Speaking of which, powering the Addies is a Japanese quartz movement, a Miata 2115 to be exact. For a watch at this price, you can't expect anything with a Swiss name, let alone a decent automatic, but at least it has a reputation for reliability. And now we can finally start singing the praises of the Addies. While its sub $50 price tag is a big temptation already, it's what's included that makes it special, and what helps to balance out most of its negatives. The bezel might be easy to spin and sound shrill, but it possesses a lume-filled ceramic insert, and at least the backplay is almost non-existent. The bracelet might be rattling and cheap, but the clasp has a nice button deploy mechanism that works well, possesses an adequate 3 micro adjustments, and also has solid end links. Comfort-wise, it's not too bad. A little nippy, but I have worn worse on more expensive watches. But with a 20mm lug width, and a very universal colorway and design, the Addies is a textbook definition of the strap monster. The crystal might be mineral, but on the plus side there isn't too much reflection even in strong sunlight, so you can still get a good read on the dial. And while the presence of a Cyclops above the date window can be divisive, the alignment on my example here is almost perfect. I can look straight down and see the date pop out at me without having to change wrist positions. As for the case, the rest of its dimensions are quite uniform, at a pinch over 40mm for dial diameter, and a bit under 48mm on the lug-to-lug measurements, so this will be a good fit for almost everybody. Along with the bezel, the hands and circular indices at every hour mark on the Addies are lume filled and glow bright when the lights go out. Up against my Seiko, it's obvious after 5 minutes won't be able to keep up, as the lume starts fading on those indices, and the hands start to lose it after 10 minutes. And at the end of 30 minutes, it's a struggle to see much, save for the thicker bezel markers. Normally I'd say that the initial strength is decent and its longevity is adequate, but at the time of writing this, it's the best lume I've ever seen on a watch for under $50, so I'm calling it a positive. The Addies also boast 200 meters of water resistance. I'm not really in a position, nor will I likely ever be, to actually take this thing on a diving expedition, so I guess my laundry tub will have to suffice. And the good news is that it still lives after submerged for over an hour and a half. Given that the Submariner theme has been used on watches more times than I've eaten hot dinners, I won't go into detail here, but the dial in this Addies example, while simple and by the numbers, is still impressive. The text and branding is kept to a minimum, with the logo and name running below the 12 indice, along with the diver's 200M and small block text above the 6, and it helps to give the Addies a clean look. All of the hourly indices are applied, the day complication has a nice metal frame around it, and, as mentioned before, the Cyclops lines up nicely with it. I know I've mentioned price several times earlier, but getting this kind of look and quality on a watch dial for under $50 is staggering, especially when you consider other watch brands at higher price points miss a few of these editions. And despite its shortcomings, I am inclined to say this is the best budget diver you can buy at this price point. Some people may argue that the Giro is a better value proposition, and in some respects they'd be right. But given you can't buy them new in Australia for under $100 anymore, let alone $50, I'd say the Addies offers better value for money. However, as I mentioned before, those hands really do let the Addies down a bit. And a close rival to the Addies is the Addiesdive SD1953 I reviewed a while ago. It might be double the price, but that still only equates to around $100 Australian dollars. And for the extra coin, you're getting a nicer, more prominent handset, sapphire crystal, automatic movement, and slightly stronger lume. Just something to consider. So even though the Addies is far from perfect, it manages to offer great looks and some nice features at a very low price. For those that are looking for a no-fuss grab-and-go diver, or have never owned a Submariner and want to test the waters, or are just looking for a decent quality and familiar watch design on a tight budget, I would still recommend it. But if I'm being honest, if you have the extra cash and prefer an automatic movement over Quartz, I'd push you more towards the Addiesdive I mentioned earlier. If you currently or previously own this Addiesdive model, I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. But that's it for now, and thanks for watching, eh?